All right. Denzel, it's good to see you again.
Good to be seen by you.
I have been looking forward to this because I've anticipated the film Malcolm X for a long time, and I must tell you just straight away that it is marvelous.
Thank you.
It's just an absolutely brilliant film, and you are brilliant in your portrayal of Malcolm X.
Wow.
Keep the tuxedo handy for the Academy Awards.
Oh boy.
Pressed and ready to
Pressed
go.
and ready to go.
Yeah, right. Denzel, if you had been able to talk with Malcolm X before you started this film, what would you have asked him?
If I had been able to talk to Malcolm X, I probably would have listened and not talked.
Man, what a humbling answer. You know, I'm not a glazer or anything like that, but Denzel, it just seemed like he always give the right answers. Or it's just always a good answer, you know? That's a level of respect right there. And there's a difference between respect and reverence. And you can still revere somebody, but sometimes that can go into idolatry. So with that level of humbling respect to where you say, you know, I probably wouldn't even say nothing. I probably wouldn't even know what to say. I probably would just listen. You know, it just shows you a level of understanding that you have of a person when it comes to their intelligence or their prowess. And you can see that with Denzel and how he respects Malcolm X. I mean, obviously he played him, so, you know, there was a level of intent there when it comes to research and understanding. And, you know, based off of that, you can tell that there was a level of respect that was strong, especially knowing what Denzel was about and his understanding of Malcolm X and his beliefs, so on and so forth. Just talking about Denzel and the commonalities between the two. And you can tell, like, when it comes to these actors, they really get into like the method. Like Denzel, like he really got into the character of Malcolm X to the point where it's like he embodied him. He embodied the spirit, and he does that very well when it comes to like certain actors that he would play, or just certain roles in general where you can tell like he's in a certain bag with it, and it takes, you know, that type of level, like Denzel, where he went from theater to where he is now over years, almost 50 years, 40 years. So it's just that level of respect that you could just tell is there.
Listen, not talk. I don't know. Strange as this sounds, I like to think I've talked with him a little bit. But I've sure listened to him in researching him and reading his words and hearing his speeches and looking at videotapes. And
Was there anything about the man that you just couldn't figure out at all?
absolutely nothing. I completely figured him out. No. And I couldn't. I tell you what was very frustrating for me was to fathom, just to understand how bright he was. I was frustrated by his intelligence because I wasn't able to cover the amount of material that he had covered in his life. I mean, this man wrote out the entire dictionary, word by word, every definition, every word. He had 6.5 years of intense study.
Ecclesiasticus 5:15, aka Sirach, chapter 5, verse 15. Be not ignorant of anything in a great matter or a small. Yeah, it's important for us to want to know things. It's important for us to want to elucidate ourselves and become, aware of things. Be taught things, humbling ourselves to knowledge, humbling ourselves to things that we don't know. You should want to be a polymath. You should want to learn as much as possible. And that's what's emphasized here in the scripture. And it's important, because you teach your son, you teach your kids. That's why I tell you in the scriptures, you teach your kid at home, you grieve the enemy. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is valuable. Knowledge is potent. Knowledge is something that is, obviously you it's intangible, It's something that you can't see and touch, but it's impactful, it's valuable, and you can feel it. But you can feel it in a spiritual way. You can feel it in a way where you understand, like, this is something that is clear to me. This is something that you know, I can identify with based off of me seeking and actually, you know, searching. Because sometimes with certain people, you can tell that these things aren't valuable to them based off of how they approach it, or based off of their, you know, their unwillingness to want it, or more so just their attitude towards it, like, oh, fuck that book or this or that. You know what I mean? That's why it's important for us to actually put these things on a pedestal as opposed to things that's frivolous, you know, or vanity, you know? How about putting these things that's intangible on a pedestal? And there's some tangible things that's important, but we already know the intangible is what's more valuable, what's more potent, the spirit, the knowledge, the wisdom. These things are intangible, you know? And it's just something that's real humbling coming from Denzel when it comes to him saying how he was frustrated by Malcolm X's intelligence. Just letting you know, still continue on with that level of respect that he had. Because Malcolm X was someone who experienced certain things and grew just when it comes to that knowledge. He grew with that knowledge. Because as we know, just, you know, when it comes to our understanding of Malcolm X, he was somebody who wasn't really on that type of time. You know, especially as he was red, like Detroit Red and whatnot. But, you know, when he went to jail, he came back home, he converted and whatnot, changed up. And it's not to say that he didn't have it in him or it wasn't innate, but at the same time, you can tell that it was more heightened based off of certain experiences from being in jail and being taught certain things about who he was, even though some of it is nonsense just in regards to the Islamic aspect, but still, you know, it's still something that you can take with you because it's valuable. You just know how to, you know, separate the meat from the bones when it comes to that understanding. But even with that, you know, he knew who he was according to the scriptures. He knew who Christ was according to the scriptures. So these things is, you know, is what's important when it comes to knowledge, wisdom, and the value of it, elucidating yourself when it comes to the truth. And not just, you know, being born into this matrix of what they want you to think, what they want you to be taught by, what they want you to be elucidated by. Conventional nonsense. They don't want you to know that you ruled in Europe and things of that nature. You know, that's what's important. The truth and the knowledge that come with it.
Study in prison. And that was the one thing that frustrated me more than anything else. Not going to prison, but just not being able to cover all the material that was at hand.
What do you think has been his contribution, and especially for African Americans today?
If someone is held back for a long time, just in physics, if you're holding something back, when you let that thing go, it's probably going to fall straight down. I think he is, as much as any other African American, with the exception maybe of Martin Luther King or that people that we know about, he was able to pick people up to get them out of that position. He was a wake-up call. He was someone who was able to change the balance, to make people think about themselves in a new light. If you're taught, if you have been taught for years, hundreds of years, that you're an animal, that you're worthless, that you're nothing, then you'll start to believe what you're taught. But he began to make people think about who the person was that was telling you you're nothing. You know, as he always said, if you've been taught that you've never done anything, then you can never do anything. So he was more than anything else a wake-up call for African Americans, for all Americans.
Right, because he was one of the only black figures that seemed to have a stance that was disparate from everybody else in regards to the whole, you know, black people coming together with the other races, and, you know, just things are going to be all peachy, just like, you know, the antithesis to Martin Luther King. And he was someone who seemed like he had his own mind, but at the same time we understood he was controlled, just like a lot of those figures are controlled. But just in regards to what he represented, you know, it's something I can understand just when it comes to what Denzel is saying. You know, he was somebody that was playing defense and still understood the offense, but he was playing defense in a way where it wasn't like, you know, trying to come together. You know what I mean? He was a part of an organization that was disparate from everybody else, that was against, you know, certain other organizations, a separatist organization pretty much. So, you know, he was somebody that wasn't really liked, as opposed to Martin Luther King, who was used for a purpose that pretty much is working today. But at the same time, is it really working, you know? But yeah, Malcolm X was definitely a polarizing figure, definitely.
The concern among some people, Denzel, and I'm sure you're aware of it, that certain things, if they're taken out of context from this film, could be very inflammatory. And even before people see the film, maybe incidents could arise at a theater or something.
You know, Malcolm was accused of being violent. And what he was essentially saying is, if someone's putting a rope around your neck, get the rope off your neck. Now, is the person that's fighting to get the rope off their neck violent, or is the person that's putting the rope around their neck violent? You know, when someone says to me, well, people are saying that this film, I say, people who? And I say, when they say that, question them. Ask them what their fears are or what their desires are. Because I always want to know who that they is. They say, well, people are saying. You know, I say, well, go talk to those people and ask them what they're afraid of. And you'll get to the core of their problem. I don't think any film, or definitely not this film, will create any kind of violence. I think that if people are afraid of looking in the mirror, or afraid of maybe their history, then they feel intimidated by it being exposed. So therefore, they react in a negative way, or they lash out, or they say, oh, it's a bad thing, it's a thing that's going to stir people up. Well, the truth hurts sometimes.
And that's part of the reason why the film didn't win an Oscar. I mean, obviously, it was supposed to win. It should have won. I mean, Denzel played the hell out of he was Malcolm X. He almost played Malcolm X better than Malcolm X. Just like, I remember at the BET Awards where I think it was Muhammad Ali who was given like some sort of lifetime achievement award, something like that. And Will Smith was presenting the award, and Muhammad Ali said, "You played me better than me." Yo, like, Denzel played the hell out there, bro. He should have got an Oscar for it, but we already know why. Because it was too raw, it was too in your face, and it was too truthful. But it was allowed, and it was necessary. You can't have a film like that today, obviously. You definitely cannot have a film like that today. But that film was necessary, and obviously it's iconic. So Denzel, you know, he's the GOAT for a reason. I don't even like to use that term, but when I say GOAT, I'm really talking about like in terms of what it really means, the greatest of all time on the surface. Because we already know what it means on the deeper level, but on the surface, you know, Denzel is one of them ones. He probably is the greatest, because he really like does it in a way where it's almost like he's not acting, like he is the character, you know.
Tonight, Front Page Challenge welcomes the outspoken Negro leader, Malcolm X.
Sir, what's the real reason why you two men split? Is it merely ideological, or is it personality? What else?
Probably personality. It was not the statement that originally was given by the movement when we split. It's more personality than anything else.
You've called people like Martin Luther King, who just got a Nobel Peace Prize, an Uncle Tom. Is this correct, first?
Well, I'd rather say that in the States, there's a law that has recently been passed, or a decision handed down by the court, wherein if you call someone an Uncle Tom, they can sue you for libel.
Well,
so I never refer to them as Uncle Toms. I would say that Uncle Martin is my friend.
Uncle Martin is your friend, yet you would disagree with his approach to what he wants to accomplish.
Definitely. If his approach would bring about what the black man in America needs to completely eliminate the problem that we have, I would say well and good. But I very much doubt that anyone who adopts the approach that Martin Luther King has been teaching to our people in that country can point to any meaningful gains that has actually served to solve the problem.